Welcome to the Talent to Learning Show podcast series, episode 99, with independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today, I interview Laura Patterson, president and co-founder of VisionEdge Marketing, to explore how marketing teams became data-driven, outcome-focused, and aligned with revenue long before learning teams. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talenttolearning.com. Welcome back, listeners, to the Talent to Learning Show podcast. On this show, for 99 episodes, I've been fortunate to interview the world's leading experts in extended enterprise learning technology from both the vendor and the practitioner perspectives. Today, from the practitioner perspective, this episode is all about turning learning into a performance engine. And we're going to take a cue from marketing to show us how. We talk a lot on this show about how customer education and other forms of extended enterprise learning is just beginning to find its seat at the revenue table, the go-to-market table. But our colleagues in marketing are several steps ahead of us in that journey. And today's guest, Laura Patterson, is one of the reasons why. Laura is the president and co-founder of VisionEdge Marketing. She's a leading authority on marketing performance management, measurement, and MarTech strategy. She's helped hundreds of organizations transform marketing from a reactive function into a strategic, accountable business partner. And she's now written 4 books on how to do it. Why should professionals pay attention? Well, I think because many of the hurdles that we face, proving impact, integrating with business systems, aligning with growth goals, have already been tackled by performance-driven marketing teams. Laura's experience can be a blueprint for how we bring that same level of rigor and respect to the customer and partner education, member education, and content as a business. In this episode, we're going to unpack what it really means to measure what matters, how to build an operational discipline without losing creativity, and how marketing's transformation holds powerful lessons for learning leaders who want to do the same. Let's get started. Laura, welcome to the Talent to Learning Show. It's sure great to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here. I have always enjoyed everything you've ever published, so it's a great opportunity for me to be able to speak with you directly. Thank you, John.
All right, excellent. Likewise. As it turns out, you published a guest post on Talent to Learning a few years ago that still remains a top 3 post out of hundreds and hundreds of Talent to Learning. So it's long overdue to get you here on the show to share your vision, as it turns out. And so maybe we'll start there. You started VisionEdge Marketing almost 20 years ago, or even more than 20 years ago. Tell us why you started it, how you did it. What's the state of the organization now? Give us the rundown.
Okay, and I'll be quick about this because nobody really wants to hear about VisionEdge Marketing. They want to hear about things I can do to help them be more successful and how we can make sure that they're measuring their success in the right way. But yes, VisionEdge Marketing was started back in 1999, and the idea of measuring marketing's impact on the business wasn't as nearly mainstream then as it is today. And I'm sure you know that. At the time, I kind of saw a big gap as a former marketer, spending a lot, and current marketer, but having a career in marketing, sales, operations, product, customer success, I could see that we were doing really important work, but we didn't always have the tools or the mindset in order to be successful and to prove. This is the most important thing, to prove that what we're doing is actually moving the needle. And so I really wanted to find a way to do that and, give people an opportunity to be able to show them a better way. So how do you link the work we're doing every day, whether it's marketing or other work, to the business outcomes and make sure that everything we do contributes to growth in a measurable way? And that's why performance measurement and management has become a core competency for us. We're not in the business of chasing trends. I know a lot of people are chasing a lot of trends right now. The big one that everyone's talking about, you can't even get to the gas station or grocery store without talking about AI. But we're here to help companies focus on what matters, align their teams, and make better decisions using data, discipline, and customer value as the foundation.
Wow, that's great. I think I'm guilty of that AI uh, remark here at Talent to Learning. But listeners, you can already hear the parallel of how Laura's thinking about tying everything and does tie everything to business, and what we talk about here all the time of getting past training metrics and getting into business metrics and really showing that actual performance. So, but in marketing, I guess, and in organizations in general, what are the key elements of a performance-driven market strategy? Like how do you meet a new client, how you start framing this out for everybody?
Oh, that's a great question. And you're right. It really doesn't matter what function you're in, but a truly performance-driven marketing function, and again, it doesn't really matter which function, starts with one keyword, alignment. And I know you talk about that, John, so I'm going to spend a few seconds here. But if your function isn't aligned to the company's business outcomes and growth strategy, you're going to really struggle because it's the clarity of the outcomes that allows you to create those really meaningful measures and the ability to actually connect the dots between what you're doing, and in this case, what marketing is doing, or in any other function is doing, and the contribution and impact it delivers to the business you support. I mean, I've always said to people in marketing, the company is giving us money to invest on its behalf. We have to show how we are using that money in a wise way to make a difference for the company. So a few key things. First, this is for everybody that's listening. Be clear about how success is going to be defined. If your marketing plan isn't tied directly to how success is being defined by the company, then you're probably going to struggle, because every marketing plan, and for that matter, any other plan in the organization, should cascade directly from the business outcomes. Second, you need customer centricity at the core. As Peter Drucker said, the purpose of business is to create a customer, and therefore customer centricity is what it's all about. If you're not delivering value to customers, you're not going to be able to create value for the business. And third, measurement, real measurement, not those vanity measures that we can all get sucked into, but real measures that show that we are, as we say here in Texas, moving the ball down the field. So you have to turn, this into reality. It takes a good roadmap. That's why we have frameworks in our company, like the Circle of Traction, like our Excellence software as a service application, like our 4 game changers. So we believe in giving people frameworks because they help organizations move from ideas to action, from activity to outcomes, and basically from guesswork to growth.
Mm-hmm. What are the most common metrics that you're tying your efforts to in an organization? Is it always revenue, or is it much broader than that?
So measurement is a financial outcome. That's true, but it's not the company wants to achieve that. I always say, great, how are you going to get to that revenue number? Is it some net new customers you need to acquire in some new market or an existing market for a specific product or service you offer? Is it by growing the share of wallet you have with a particular set of existing customers? Is it by entering a new market with a new product? How are you going to do it? What is success going to be? Because that's going to define your metrics. For example, if it's expanding the amount of business you're doing with existing customers, that might be share of wallet as a key metric. If it's getting a new product into a market and getting adoption from new customers or existing customers, it might be the product adoption rate. So really understanding what success is going to dictate what kind of measures.
How do you go about finding out where to ask in the organization? Do you go to the same place every time, the executives? How do you find out what these metrics are that are the most important? Are they aligned from group to group in a given organization?
Well, back to alignment, everybody should be rowing in the same direction. So the overarching business success metrics should be what everybody is working toward. And that means the executive team and everyone supporting the executive team needs to have clarity around what those success measures are. It could be customer lifetime value. It could be footprint expansion. Without knowing what those are, it would be hard for me to determine what the actual metric will be. And then all of the functions measures will tie into that metric. So, in the early stages of a company, and I know you work with companies in all stages. So if we're talking about early stages, we know companies tend to focus on just doing more, right? Let's just do more. But that's oftentimes actually producing lots and lots of random acts that are costing time, money, and strategic capacity. So you want to be careful about getting sucked into the random acts vortex. And as we get more mature, we get more focused, we understand that we have to shift from volume to value. And then we begin asking much tougher questions like, what's working? What's not working? Are we attracting the right customers? Or have we got clarity around the problems that we're really solving? What is our ideal problem profile? It's great to talk about customers, but what's the real problems that we're solving, right? So we can move from all those kind of impressions and clicks and other things to those better measures. And then as we move into like more advanced stages, then marketing in particular can become a much better strategic partner. And we can begin to help the organization really use good data and get insights from that data to inform decisions, help allocate the resources that they need, and contribute to the long-term business health. I know it's not a smooth journey. I know you know that from the work you do with your customers, but with the right guidance, it's totally achievable.
What's a timeline for an organization to go from more is better, that activity based to actual performance and outcome based? Is that a decade long process? Is that something that could be achieved in a year? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, the sooner the better. Otherwise, it's just a waste, right? Of time, money, energy. Yeah. So the sooner the better, and I think it can be done right away. I just had this conversation, John. Someone was talking. We were talking about an early stage company that's bringing a very important product to market, they're working on their go-to-market plan and their product launch plan, and they're talking all about. And I said, "Well, have you written it down? Is it in writing somewhere that we can look at it?" And the answer was no. I said, "Well, if you don't get any points if it's not written down." And so they laughed at that too. And I said, we need to get it written down because that's how we make sure that we do have alignment and that we're not just, all over the game board, that we actually are moving in forward direction, in alignment with the right kind of measures. I really think that this is something every company can do. And I have this little test I recommend everyone take. In fact, I've written an article on this not that long ago, which is open up your plan, whether that's in PowerPoint or Word or wherever it is, and see if you can, hopefully visually, but also really literally, draw a straight line from your outcomes all the way to your activities. Can you draw a straight line? And anything that's not on that line is an orphan. And an orphan is a random act. So either those things need to be tied more closely to an outcome. Maybe you're missing an outcome, or maybe those are things to reconsider. So that's an example. It's just a simple thing that any company can do.
Interesting. For instance, can you give an example of that?
Oh, sure. How many times have you had conversation with someone who's walked in and said, I just saw this company that did A, B, and C on social media. We should do that too. Or somebody walks in and says, we have an opportunity to do a sponsorship for X, Y, and Z. Let's think about doing that. My first question is, what outcome does that tie to? How will that help us achieve what we're trying to achieve and create both business and customer value? And will that do it better than something else we already have on the plan? Because I don't know about you, John, but I have never met a company that has an unlimited budget and can do everything. So if you know that company, I'd like to meet them. So
Like to get hired.
yes. So does that help?
That does help. That does help. So let's look at the other side. How do you know that you're on the line? Like what metrics in learning, we take training metrics like, logins and completions or sales, and then we combine that with business metrics in the sense of which customers, for example, have taken that training and what's their performance in the business? Are they renewing more? Are they buying more? And we look at some, sort of, metric, and then we look at another group that didn't take a given training, and we look at their performance, and then we can start to measure whether we're making an impact or not. At least that's how we've been approaching it in learning. Is it the same in marketing, or are you going about it in a much smarter way?
I don't know if it's smarter, but so one of the things that I think you're alluding to, and if I can put some words maybe in your mouth, we have this concept of both logic and what we would call math data chains, right? So logic chains are things that they make sense from the top to the bottom. Is this a logical sequence in the measures? And then do we have the math or the data in order to support what we'll need for these measures? So in marketing terms, way, way down in the weeds are those things like website traffic, right? Or webinar registrants, or booth traffic at an event, or whatever it might be, way down there. But the real thing that you're trying to do, maybe further up, is some kind of conversations, let's say, that marketing needs to create in order for X number of conversations with X type of people. So that would be a higher order, right? And below that might be some number of appointments. You can't have conversations if you don't secure appointments, and some not somewhere below that. So you'd create this chain, and that would be once you have your plan, it should be able to make that chain. And if it doesn't make that chain, you probably have something out of whack.
Wow, interesting, interesting. So when you find clients, you've helped hundreds of clients over the years. What's the biggest gap that you see in these teams? Do you run into the same thing over and over again? Is it that much is better mentality, or is there other, I don't know, traits, gaps, opportunities, that are just consistent from team to team to team? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the biggest challenge almost everyone has is about change, doing something different. And maybe you could speak to that because I know you ask people to make change too. Change is never easy. And what we are asking people to do is a different approach, right? And change isn't really always about process, it's about people. So we have to meet people where they are, understand how ready they are to move forward. Make sure you get champions inside the organization that are embracing what it is you're trying to achieve, and then setting some realistic expectations. So we really try to have a very structured, collaborative approach. But we find that in general, the biggest challenge people really have is, I'm too busy chopping wood to sharpen my axe.
Oh, that's funny. Little Abe Lincoln there for you.
Yeah, well, if it works.
If it works. One of the things that's really challenging for learning teams is the technology. In just almost no time, overnight and a day, we've went from 20, 30 different types of learning systems to 1,000 different types. Now with AI, we have new approaches, new innovations, new way of doing learning. Learning teams are bogged down with this analysis paralysis of learning systems. And then I looked at your industry, and 1,000 seems quaint since you have about
Yeah.
15,000 tools. So tell me how you think about that. How do you stay up on these tools in these categories? How do you keep your clients up to speed? How does that factor into the equation to make a bigger impact for your clients? What are your thoughts on that? It's a big question, but
Okay, well, and I'll try to be a little brief on the answer because it is a really big question and be a topic all its own. And you are right, because the MarTech landscape, it looks more like an overgrown jungle and gets worse every year, right? And so our philosophy is pretty simple. You don't start with a tool, you start with a result. And once you understand what you're trying to accomplish and what processes you need in order to improve or enable that result, then you can figure out what the right technology is going to be. And it's never the other way around. Quick story. I've told this story many times, and I actually have the story on our website. It's a story about my father who was quite a handyman, and he had a pretty substantial workroom, for all the projects that he liked to do with all kinds of tools. And I had my first little red toolbox. Do you remember those, John? When I was probably 4 years old with my little hammer and my screwdriver and my wrench and all the other things. And I loved going to the hardware store. And back when I was young, we actually had real hardware stores in the neighborhood, not these big boxes. And people there, would know what they were doing and be able to give advice. And I loved going there. And back then again, you kind of just meandered around in the hardware store. People just sort of let you be. And so I remember one time, and I couldn't have been maybe more than 4 or 5. We were in the hardware store, and I had come across something that I was just fascinated with. And as my father was wrapping up, I grabbed his coat sleeve and I said, I want to show you something, Daddy. And I took him over to show him this a tool. It turned out that it was a bandsaw. And I told him that I thought it looked really, I can't remember my exact words. I was 4 years old, but something like, this is really cool and we should have one. And one of the things my father says, well, do you know how to use that bandsaw? And I said, no. He says, do you know what it's for? And I said, no. I'm 4 years old. He said, well, here's the thing that's important to remember about any tool. If you don't know how to do something manually well first, then if you automate it, you will only do more damage faster.
wow.
Yeah. And so I try to impress upon people, yes, we all need tools. we have a slew of tools in our company, but we understood what the mechanics are first and have the process done first. So like right now, a lot of people are going through the process of trying to get AI to do things and automate things. And we just had this happen with a customer probably not even a couple months ago. They had come to us about doing some process work, and they decided that they would just have the AI help them do the process work and the automation work. Okay. So they gave the AI what the process was, and then they made asked the AI to make some recommendations on how to modify that process. And then they went ahead and they started implementing that process. And things got messy, as you would imagine, right? Because they didn't really vet the process. They didn't do some of the key steps in process mapping. They didn't do some of the key steps of validating a process, all the things that you need to do. They just went from, I want to automate the process. So that's just would be a cautionary tale.
Interesting. Interesting. Something that we have in common is that we have a lot in common, as it turns out. But our strategy of content marketing, of really putting out thought leadership. Can you describe what your strategy is there and how that helped your business in terms of, I guess, framing the discussion and finding clients? Curious to see how similar or dissimilar that is from my what I think a similar journey.
Well, we do happen to believe that an educated and informed customer is one that will be more successful. We're all about teaching our customers how to fish, right? There's always more things we can do to help them. We want them to be able to do things eventually sooner than later on their own. And that means you have to have good thought leadership and good content to help them do that. So it's been a central part of our strategy from day one. I mean, I don't know how many posts we have on our website, but it's in the hundreds, right? So when it's done well, I think thought leadership educates. And also is a great way to kind of pre-qualify, because when they read the content and or listen to a podcast like this one, or they download a framework, or or a report like the ones that you create, they get a sense of your approach and what your values are and how you work. And that makes it easier for everyone to decide whether or not it's a good fit. So for us, our content is less about being visible and more about creating value. We want every piece of content we produce to help the people we work with think differently, take action, make better decisions. And we also want to use it to attract people who are serious about making real progress, not just doing something for the sake of doing it, but make real progress and be open to doing things differently. Back to that idea of change.
Super, super. Sounds similar. How does your production schedule work? How do you figure out what to write next?
Oh, okay. Great question. It comes from listening. We do some listening, a lot of listening, and we have conversations with people a lot. And as I begin to see common themes, I will oftentimes that'll spark an idea that I have. So really, it comes down to paying attention, listening, and sometimes just I'll read something and I'm thinking, so our first book, our very first book, which was Gone Fishing, was really a result of reading something that I disagreed with. And I started writing a response. This is back in 2001. I started writing a response to this article I had read. And by the time I was finished writing the response, one of the folks on the team said, I think you might have the makings of a book here. If it's less of a rant and more educational, we might have the makings of a book. And that's kind of a good example of how we develop content.
Wow, great. Tell us about a typical client.
Oh, so we work predominantly in the B2B space. Most of our customers have what I would call complex products that require a consultative sell. Multiple people are involved in the process. And in order for them to engage with their customers, they need to understand their customers better and what their customers need. And then we help them make sure that they are addressing that. So it could be from positioning or messaging or bringing a new product to market and defining what that product is, all the way to putting together a strategic plan or a go-to-market plan, anything that helps them create more customer value in order to create more business value. And most importantly, banish random acts.
Banish them. No random acts.
No random
allowed.
acts.
No random acts allowed. All right, cool. And if tell us about Tell us about your SaaS application. So you're breaking some new ground with a SaaS application. What's that doing? What's the value for organizations?
Thank you. It's called Excellence, and it stands for Accelerating Performance Excellence, right? That's really what it is. And it is an application that allows people to create a plan visually that connects those outcomes we talked about with activities. It could be a plan for marketing, could be a plan for sales or for a customer or product, doesn't matter what the organization is. And it's statement based, so you can imagine that in its future roadmap will be some AI capability. And the idea is that by being able to create this plan, then you can define your measures. So you'll have your metrics chains all defined. And that way you'll have the beginnings of a really good performance management dashboard. And the cool thing is that now you will also have what we call outcome-based budgeting and outcome-based calendaring. So you're probably, as someone who leads a company, familiar with cost accounting for budgeting, right? And so you have those line items like PR, events, content, website, whatever on your line items for marketing, as an example.
Yep.
That's great, but then when it's time to really know whether or not you made a difference to an outcome, it's really hard to discern that from a cost accounting budget. Excellence allows you to see exactly what you're budgeting for every outcome, and then to measure whether or not you got something for the investment that you made.
Neat, neat. So bringing it all together, your best practices, and just facilitating it all. Cool
Yeah,
stuff. Cool
thank you.
stuff. And taking your consulting business past the need for you to and your consultants to touch each and every day, but start teaching people to fish for themselves, which is a great idea for all consultancy to kind of branch out from a business model. All right, cool. If you're a Horizon, so everything's changing. My two daughters, my first daughter is about ready to graduate from college, and my second one is halfway through, and I'm looking at them as they're evolving out into the real world and thinking, things are changing with AI, with just the impact in the marketplace. And I guess if you were a rising marketing person right now, what would be your best advice for them to succeed for the long term, not just in 2025, but to set a path of decades of success in this industry? What would your advice be?
Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus and give you two pieces of advice.
Awesome.
Okay, first one is a very practical piece of advice. Looking back on my career, which is decades, right? Decades, I was really just happened to be very, very lucky that I started relatively very early in the technology wave. One of my very first jobs was application software that ran on a Wang 2200. So that gives you some idea of how early, right? Back then, computers were IBM, Cray, digital equipment, right? Things like that. There wasn't, and so Wang was a big new kind of a player for people who are not familiar with that company, which doesn't even exist anymore. And then that led to a technology company known as Motorola Semiconductor, that led to an enterprise software technology company, and so forth and so on. So it's good to know what are waves, and we're certainly in several ways, whether that's cybersecurity, blockchain, artificial intelligence. It's worth identifying companies that are in that wave and getting the opportunity to be a part of the wave. So I would recommend that if finding a role that suits your skills and makes you happy in a marketplace that is going to have momentum. So that's practical advice for your daughter, okay? And of course, healthcare is always a good one, and there's a lot of technology going on in healthcare, so that would be a very interesting space to consider. But my other piece of advice would be start with clarity. Have a real clear idea what your purpose is, what your value proposition, and what you want to help companies achieve, because you should put your own plan together. This is a good opportunity to think about that. You don't have to have a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan, but you should have a couple-year plan, so that you understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, so you can know what you need to do to move the ball down the field for your career. No one else is going to be in charge of your career. Only you are in charge of your career. So focus on building relationships. I think that's really critical. I feel so blessed to have relationships like the one that I have with you. I think, still human beings do business with human beings. They know, they like, and they trust. And so I think that's just a key part of being successful in business. And then since we were talking about metrics, I want to close by saying, really get clear about what measures matter. Don't chase metrics. Choose the ones that will show you real progress. And wherever you can, show how your work helps create, keep, or grow customers, and how you can be indispensable to the organizations that you serve.
Our sage advice, Laura Patterson, president and co-founder of VisionEdge Marketing. Stealing my favorite word, become indispensable. I use that all the
I
time.
know
That's
you
great.
do, and I love that word too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's great. It's wonderful to hear about your business and really how aligned marketing and learning have become in their approaches, and really how the two worlds are even colliding now, in that so much of good learning is marketing, and using not only the best practices and principles, but really the foundation of it. It's amazing, especially in learning for business, how these two worlds are colliding. So it's great to have you here to share your expertise. Listeners, if you need some marketing help, all you got to do is go to VisionEdge.com. Is that the VisionEdge.com?
VisionEdgeMarketing.com.
Yeah,
Or just
VisionEdge
reach out
Marketing.
to me on LinkedIn, Laura Patterson, or send me a note, laurap@VisionEdgeMarketing.com. And John, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to have a chance to have a conversation with you.
I agree. I always learn a ton. Listeners, thanks very much for tuning in to another episode of the Talented Learning Show. Laura, thanks for sharing your expertise. It's great to have you here. And we'll see you on the next. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talentedlearning.com. Have a great day, everyone.